So with that, I guess I'll go ahead and start the presentation. If you have questions, feel free to just chime in. We do have Sonia Ayers with the LGP section that will be here to assist with the risk assessment and SPA portion of the presentation, and I'll present the slides, but Sonia may add some additional information, or if there are questions, she'll be able to help us with answering those as well. So kind of a overview of where we are with our TA program. Since 2015, PTN has managed this program, and going back to 2015, the projects are beginning to close out in the system. I think more than 28 projects from 2015 have been completed, but until they're closed out in the system, there's no way for us to track that. So if you know of projects that are complete, just make sure that they are closed out so that we can count them as completed projects. But we're making progress with the 2015 and 2017 projects, moving through the construction process and completed. We have quite a few projects in the construction phase. And then once we get into 2019, more projects are in the design phase. And then the second round of awards, which were actual from the 2019 call, which were actually awarded in April of this year, those projects are moving through the project initiation process. And then we have the 41 projects that were awarded at the end of October that will start moving through and getting the AFAs executed. As far as timeline, we're here in January, about midway through January. Our target for completing or having projects entered into TxDOT Connect was end of December. There are some projects that are state-led projects that we're still verifying detail and how the funding page is entered into TxDOT Connect. We're meeting with finance tomorrow, so we should have a kind of a final answer on that and can provide guidance. But if your projects, if you still haven't initiated or started entering them into TxDOT Connect, now's the time to start that so that we can stay on track with the other target deadlines for project initiation. For projects that will need to be individually listed in the STIP, we're targeting September 1st of 2022 to get the AFA executed. For projects that can be grouped, we should be able to execute those AFAs earlier than that, and so we're hoping by May 1st we can get the majority of those projects that can be grouped in the STIP, get those AFAs executed. This is the tool of project initiation, or the list of project initiation tools that we provided. We're still working on the AFA cost breakdown spreadsheet. I'll show you the draft that we have of that in this presentation. The rest of the tools we provided during our last initiation meeting, but there's the overall guidance document. There's a detailed applications which are available on SharePoint, We have a initiation checklist that's helpful in the overall process, and just provides kind of a reminder checklist of the tasks that need to be completed to initiate the project. There's the TxDOT Connect cost input spreadsheet, the tip cost breakdown spreadsheet, and then, like I said, we'll provide the AFA spreadsheet. And the AFA templates are available on the CSD SharePoint. And so if any of these tools you don't have a copy or you need a copy, they're available on SharePoint, or you can ask and we'll send them to you. And like I said, there's the project initiation checklist that is sort of the overall checklist for the process and can assist with making sure that you hit all those tasks whenever you're initiating the projects. And so with that, I think I'll turn it over to Bonnie. She was gonna present the overview for the tip and step information.
All right. So we briefly touched on this last time. Many of these projects will be grouped. So this slide talks mostly about grouping projects in the tip and step. Most projects that are funded with TA are bike and ped projects, and they are eligible to be grouped. So be familiar with the grouped project definitions. Some MPOs may still want to individually list projects, but please verify and check with your MPOs again, because some of them have recently changed course and agreed to group projects in their tip and step. All projects located outside MPO boundaries will be grouped in TxDOT's rural tips. Projects located in the MPO boundary, again, verify with your MPO. In order to take advantage of grouping or have your project grouped in the tip and step, all you need to do is send an email to TPP_step and ask them to add the bicycle and pedestrian group project ID to TxDOT Connect. The revision date will be the next step revision, which is 02/22. And grouped projects do not get uploaded into eStep. However, if the project is located in an MPO area, they do need to email, the MPO needs to email TPP's STEP staff, Lori Morell and Angela Irwin, with the documentation showing that they have adopted the grouped chart. Next slide. So for projects that will be individually listed in a tip and step. So as I mentioned, some MPOs may choose to individually list their TA projects. Also, some project scopes don't meet the grouped project definitions. An example of this is a road diet. There's one project I know that it has a road diet in Longview. So Tyler District, your project in Longview has to be individually listed. So for uploading it into or amending it into the tip, work with your local government and your MPO. The MPO has to amend it into the tip and go through their public process. Then the MPO will enter that information into eStep portal to include it into the statewide step. And so the process is there. They do have to go through public involvement processes, both at the MPO stage and at the statewide stage. So it is a much longer drawn out process. Let's see. And then we did distribute to everyone a few months ago a STEP input spreadsheet that breaks down where all of the costs should go. And next slide. And we do ask if your project will be individually listed to send it to us to review. So this is the grouped project ID definition for the STIP. You can see the definition there for bicycle and pedestrian grouped category. Next slide. These two slides highlight all of the projects that are located within MPO areas. So in these areas, please confirm with your MPO whether or not the project will be grouped in the STIP or individually listed. And then there's that Longview, City of Longview, it's in red because we know it needs to be individually listed. Next slide. So this is just a snapshot of the STIP spreadsheet. We set it up so that it would automatically populate with information that comes from the application. We have wording there and project history that needs to be verbatim in a STIP entry when it's individually listed. All projects need both the C and the E phase. And then we want you to match TxDOT connects as far as the limits and the description. Next slide. And then here's all the cost breakdown. So if the project is individually listed, please use the cost breakdown shown in the spreadsheet and send it to PTN for review before the MPO board takes action, please, so that we can minimize the need for amendments later. Next slide. So this is the STIP deadline. We are working toward a February 2022 quarterly revision. All projects would need to be finalized in an E-STIP if they're going to make that revision by January 25th, right around the corner. But hopefully everybody will group. So next slide. I think, and that's it for me.
Thanks, Bonnie. So for projects that were awarded funds in October that are eligible for PS&E or environmental cost that were identified in the detailed application, the final detailed application submitted by the project sponsor, or projects that are requesting a local letting for construction. These projects need a risk assessment as well as the special approval form needs to be filled out. Part A is completed by the local government and Part B by TxDOT. The special approval and risk assessment must be completed prior to the CSD's review of the AFA for execution. So most projects in this round of awards requested and are eligible to receive reimbursement for PS&E. So I think by and large, most of the projects will require a risk assessment and special approval. These are just screenshots of the forms, and you can find those on this website, which the local government projects page on the TxDOT website. Pull that up. And the local government agency risk assessment and the oversight level special approval Part A and B are available on this page.
So Noah, let me just add something real quickly. This is Sonia Ayers from the local government project section at TxDOT. Some of the local communities, the LGs that are part of this program, already have a current risk assessment. So that first bullet point, that first form that Noah outlines there, the form on the far left of the slide, that has already been completed and is consistently updated for some of these local governments. So if you are a coordinator and you're not sure if your local government needs a risk assessment, or you need to know what the current overall risk score for your local government might be, you can work with your local government coordinator there at the district, or you can send me an email in the project section, local government project section, and I can assist you in getting in contact with your local government coordinator in your district, and B, finding out what the current overall risk score is for your local government. So always copy Noah or Bonnie or whoever you're working with in PTN on your emails on any of your requests. If you forget to do so, I'll make sure they get into the loop. But all that said, there are some of these communities that may very well have an active and continually updated overall risk score. And so that part of your work has been completed. So I did want to mention that at this point in the presentation.
Thanks, Sonia. Arnold Voles with the Beaumont District did say that he thinks that the risk assessments are good for 2 years, or is there like a time limit on them, or is it?
So a local government with an overall risk score of an A or a B, which is basically low risk to the TxDOT as an agency, they are required to be updated at least every 2 years. If you have a local government who has a C, which is high risk to TxDOT, or even a D, which is an unacceptable risk to TxDOT, those have to be updated once a year. So we track these pretty closely. And even though some of our districts do elect to assign risk scores of unacceptable risk to TxDOT, that does not mean that they aren't eligible for programming under a hike and bike trail or something of that nature. That just means they've evaluated the risk and they want everybody to be especially careful working with those local governments. But the risk assessment is good for 12 months or they require update every 12 months. Now, a district engineer may determine that there is a good reason to complete an assessment outside the 2-year or the 1-year framework based upon what's going on in that community. An example I've used before is if there's a fraud or something discovered in the community and there's a concern that the local government hasn't been acting appropriately, the district engineer may decide that it's necessary to complete a risk assessment at that moment in time because of things going on in the community. It's also possible that a local government that has a C evaluation as an overall risk score may request that they believe they've made improvements in their program, and they may request a risk assessment be performed, and they may petition the district engineer to reevaluate their overall risk score. That is absolutely appropriate, and it's done all the time. And it is appropriate that those types of issues be evaluated at the district level. The district has the authority in these circumstances. So, but in general, when we're speaking of risk assessments, if it's an A or a B overall risk score, it has to be updated every 2 years, but may be updated more frequently if the district engineer determines there's an issue that creates a reason to evaluate a local government. So I hope that, Arnold, does that answer your question? 2 years if it's an A or a B, or the district engineer can determine that a different time frame is appropriate, or 12 months if it's a C or a D. Okay, good. That sounds good. Hope that was a good explanation. I'll let you go on, move on, Noah.
Okay, thanks. So for the special project approvals, eligible PS&E environmental cost identified in the TA application or local letting for construction. Fill out the areas in the special project approvals that the local government is requesting special approval to manage. So if they're have reimbursable PS&E, then it would be the environmental and the design sections. If they're not being reimbursed for PS&E and are only letting for construction locally, then it's the letting award and the construction oversight. And then if they're receiving both reimbursement for PS&E and they're letting it locally, then it would be all 4 of these areas. And those are within the special project approval form. The phases that are listed out, and the local government will fill out the phases that they will manage for reimbursable PS&E or the local letting. The next topic was the AFA template. The latest version was posted on CSD's SharePoint site December 10th. So it's pretty new template. The main changes from the last template is that there was a AFA ID box added to the header, and then the attachments, the order of the attachments were rearranged. So make sure you are using the latest version. You'll want to, even if you know that the latest version based on this presentation is December 10th, whenever you get to the AFA point of implementation, just go ahead and go to CSD's SharePoint site and download the latest, just to ensure that you are getting that most current version. You'll enter project information in areas that are identified with red text, and then also complete the attachments A, B, and C. Don't change the template language of the AFA without approval from contract services. The date in the footer shouldn't be changed either, so that is just showing the template date, the revision date of that template. So you want to leave that as it is. If you could submit the AFAs to PTN for review and approval prior to submission to CSD, we'll review that and let you know if we have any comments or edits. And once we provide those comments or edits, or let you know that the AFA looks good, then you can go ahead and forward that to CSD. So this just shows in more detail some of the Details for the header. It helps to include the name of the entity for the chart code number. And then also, if you add district 3-letter abbreviation, that helps just for referencing whenever you open up the AFA. It just makes it easier to recognize the project. If those are not included, it's not a requirement by CSD, but it does help us just when we're looking through AFAs and need to quickly reference or get an AFA from a certain project. The catalog, Federal Domestic Assistance, CFDA, all TI projects will use number 20.205, highway planning and construction. And then here's the link to the chart code 64, and you can get the code for city, county, and agencies. So if you go to this link and then just find the chart code 64 and open it up and look for the city, county, or agency that's a project sponsor, then you'll get that code number. For the location match, which is now attachment A, we want to make sure that the location map is as clear as it can be. For this map, it's zoomed in quite a bit, so it's pretty easy to include really clear roadway labels and a clear project boundary with the project area depicted by this line right here. When you zoom out for larger projects that have limits that go, like a mile or something like that, it can be a little more challenging, but we want to make sure that the roadways that the project is on are clearly labeled and that the limits or the roadways that serve as limits are clearly labeled as well, just so you can look at the map and easily understand what the project limits are. The budget is now attachment B. This is just a screenshot. I'll switch over to the AFA spreadsheet that we're providing that'll assist with filling out this budget, these two budget pages. And then attachment C is the resolution. And we have a example resolution from the April award, but we'll update that with the new date and minute order so that that'll be available to project sponsors who would like a template to use. We want to make sure that they have key language in there. So we'll update this and provide it along with the Excel spreadsheet that'll assist with populating attachment B. And I'll pull that up just to show you what we are working on. We need to kind of go through and make sure we have everything accounted for on the spreadsheet, but it's pretty close to being complete. But you will select your project at the top of the table. And then the cells will auto-populate and you will follow these instructions on the side that basically provide, depending on whether the local is completing the PS&E or if the state is completing the PS&E. Depending on each one of these options, you'll fill out that portion of the AFA spreadsheet or the AFA attachment B. So depending on each one of these prompts, you may fill out the form a little differently. And we try to make it look as much like the AFA attachment B as we could so that it would be pretty straightforward on how to enter the numbers. Sometimes you do run into rounding issues just because this is a calculation and goes to the cents, it'll round a little bit differently. So you may have to play around with the numbers up here to make sure that you get the total participation to match the awarded amount and the amount that's in the detailed application. But then depending on which combination of local led and state led, or local doing the PS&E and state letting the construction, you'll fill out one of these three. One of these three will be the values that you'll fill out in the AFA template. And like I said, we'll provide that spreadsheet next week in an email, and we'll post it on the SharePoint site. So for the design phase for the projects with reimbursable PS&E, and this is the majority of the projects that were awarded funds did have reimbursable PS&E. There was 6 or 7 who did not. Either they chose not to, or they were in a population area 50,000 or more, were not eligible for reimbursement of PS&E. But I think 6 or 7 don't have reimbursable PS&E out of the 41. But the local government will need to develop a clear scope of work for consultant services. The district will request a DBE goal for engineering phase. And this is that same link to the local government projects, or I guess it might be. Here, let me go to this link. So you can find some guidance on goal, DBE goal setting. This link will provide tools and information for requesting that DBE goal for the engineering phase. The district will review and approve the local government's procurement documents for procuring professional services. And this follows the Texas Government Code, Chapter 2254 and Federal Rules 23, CFR 172. They'll review the draft contract, the local government's protocol for procurement, and the selection procedures. And the local government will publicly solicit for the professional services. And this is more, these are links to more resources for making sure that the local government follows the federal procurement process. So if the local government's being reimbursed for engineering and environmental, The local government must follow the requirements for procurement, management, and administration of engineering and design related services for procurement of professional services. So that's basically what I went over in the last slide. If a local government does not have a procurement process in place, they can request an example of a procurement process that works, that would meet the federal guidelines, either from a neighboring entity, or they can request an example from the TxDOT district. And if they want costs to be eligible for reimbursement, then the professional services must be competitively procured to complete the scope of work for the TA project. And the local government may solicit, select, negotiate, sign a contract with a consultant before the FPAA, as long as the process is consistent with state and federal requirements, and the procurement process and contract are reviewed and approved by TxDOT. But any costs that may occur prior to a fully executed AFA and FPAA, those costs are not eligible for reimbursement. So even though they can procure a PE consultant before the FPAA, if that consultant starts work, whatever work they do before the FPAA or the FPAA would not be eligible for reimbursement. And this just goes through the steps that need to be completed before charges can be incurred and reimbursed. So the project has to be improved in the STIP. The AFA must be fully executed. The FPAA for PE phase has been issued by FHWA, and then the notice to proceed has been sent to the local government by the TxDOT district. And of course, the approval of the consultant selection procedures by the district is also a requirement. For the AFA and FPAA, the Federal Project Authorization Agreement, FPAA, executed between TxDOT and FHWA for all state selected 2021 TA projects. There will be 2 FPAAs, the preliminary engineering phase and the construction phase. For the preliminary engineering phase, the district initiates the FPAA request to finance after the AFA is fully executed and after the first payment is received by the project sponsor. On the construction phase, the AFA must be fully executed. The environmental documentation must be approved and entered into ECOS. The LG must certify that all utilities have been adjusted, all property has been acquired, and the railroad coordination is complete if there is a railroad on the project. For local lets, the district initiates the FPAA request to finance, and for state lets, the FPAA request is automatically initiated by finance. Finance will send the FPAA request to us for concurrence. FHWA is requesting 10 days to 2 weeks to approve FPAAs for PE. And then for construction, FHWA is requesting 3 weeks to approve FPAAs. So once you have a partially executed AFA, you can go ahead and submit once you have a partially executed AFA, you can submit a request for the FPAA for PE just to get the ball rolling so that once that AFA is executed, you can start moving forward with the design phase of the project.
Noah, I had a quick question for you.
Sure.
On the previous slide, the first, I guess the first sub bullet point, the project has to be approved in the STIP. When it's grouped, that would not be the case, or I mean, I think Bonnie mentioned that the idea would be to have most projects where possible grouped. So would that just, I don't know if you can speak to that.
This is Bonnie. Once a project is grouped in TxDOT Connect with the group project ID, it's as good as being approved as long as the MPO has adopted the latest grouped listing, project listing. For rural projects, TxDOT has adopted that grouped project list. So you're good to go there. And I believe HGAC has adopted that grouped project list as well, Anna. But for other MPOs, the MPO does have to adopt that grouped project listing as part of their TIP. But once they've adopted it and once we've put the grouped project ID in TxDOT Connect, it is as good as being on the approved STIP.
So no need to wait. That sounds
Right.
great.
Yes.
Okay, and that was my last slide of content. So if anyone has any questions or comments, please, now would be the time. And of course, after the meeting, if you think of anything, please contact me, Bonnie, or Carl with any questions you may have.
I wanted to mention that we don't include in-kind contributions in this presentation. We have been phasing out in-kind contributions, and the last couple of awards did not include in-kind contributions. We reimbursed PE directly. However, some past projects from 2019 did still include in-kind contributions. And I just want to put a reminder out there that you treat in-kind contribution work the same way you would treat it as reimbursement for PE. And that means that you have to follow the federal process. We have to review and approve the procurement process. We have to have an executed AFA. We have to have an FPAA for the engineering phase, STIP requirements. All of that has to be in place before the in-kind work can proceed. So just wanted to remind everyone that if you have an in-kind project out there that's still in the process, be sure you have followed the federal process and that you have an FPAA for the PE phase before the work is beginning. And feel free to follow up with us if you have questions.
I was looking through the chat, but it looks like Bonnie was able to answer any questions that popped up through the chat. If anyone has any questions.
I know it's Jason Alvarez in Corpus. Got a question concerning the TDC credits. And mainly as far as the AFA goes. I'm assuming these AFAs are going to be written so that it's either 100% federal or a combination of federal and state with those TDC credits.
Yes, so for the, excuse me, for the projects that have TDCs, it'll show 100% federal. If you've had a project that was a Safe Routes to School project that was 100% federal reimbursed, it'll look similar to that in the AFA.
Okay, and are those funds fixed? And the locals are responsible for any overages at the end of the day? Or
Yes,
it's still 100%?
it would be 100% for the amount that's awarded. So anything that goes above that, the language in the will be similar, that the local government could be responsible for 100% of any cost overruns.
Okay, very good. That answered my question. So y'all going to send the spreadsheet out next week, y'all said?
Yes.
All right, because I'm already starting to get some phone calls. They want to start the AFA process. So very good.
Great.
Thank y'all.
Welcome.
We have a question in the chat. Are funds fixed per phase or overall? Funds for the TA projects are fixed overall. So if there is an underrun in the PE, but an overrun in construction, excess PE funds can apply to that, or direct state costs, similar. So the funds are for the entire project and can be used on any phase. And to follow up on the line of questioning with Jason, we did adjust the rules a few years, or I guess a year or so ago, to allow additional funds to be applied to a project if there is an overrun, and we're working out the process for that. At this point, it has been handled on a case-by-case basis. So if your project is facing overruns, feel free to discuss any options with us for available additional funds, but we are working out the development of a formal process for applying additional funds.
Okay, that sounds great. Very good.
And Mark followed up with, so if there's an overrun in the PE phase, it would just, that overrun would be covered since the overall limit was not met, but there would be less funds for the construction phase if more funds were used for PE than was originally anticipated. That's correct.
Right. So it's important to kind of manage the funds from the outset to try to limit that potential. But if that is, if that comes up, then again, that's a discussion that we can have about potential availability of funds. But hopefully we'll get that policy out in the next month or so.
All right, well, if you have any additional questions, feel free to stay on and ask. I think we'll stay on for a few more minutes, but otherwise, I think that's the end of our presentation. Like I said earlier, be on the lookout for next week for that AFA spreadsheet we'll provide to everybody. And then if you have any questions along the way, please let us know.
And Mark has another question in the
Oh.
chat. That's all right. If TxDOT designs the project, then they are using those identified PE funds. Yes. In some projects, the TxDOT has done the PS&E on behalf of the project sponsor. And in some of the cases, PEPS funds were used out of the district allocation. In other cases, PE funds were available on the project, federal TA funds, or Safe Routes to School funds. And those funds are used in the PE phase. And then if there is an overrun because TxDOT is doing the work, then we have handled that on a case-by-case basis. In some cases, the district has covered the overruns through their allocation. And in another case, we have added federal funds. So it's something that we're trying to work out in our policy so that we're consistent. So we need to resolve the policy going forward. But at this point, we're handling it case by case. All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bonnie, this is Russell Washer up in the Amarillo district. Do you have
Hello.
So the city of Amarillo submitted this Barrio project. And I guess the question I have is, like under safety, they spelled out lane narrowing and road diet,
Yes.
but we're not taking a lane away. We're just reducing the width of the lane from 12 foot to 11 foot. So I guess my question is this project, I mean, would it still be eligible to group? Or is it going to get me in trouble because the application calls out road diet and has road diet items in their estimate?
So if they're narrowing the lane but not reducing the number of travel lanes, then that's fine. We just need to make sure that the project description then doesn't use the language road diet, because that's kind of a incorrect usage of the term. I guess technically that would be considered a lane diet, skinnying up the lane.
Right.
But
Well,
but
the project description in the application doesn't mention lane diet or anything, but it was just curious, like under the safety, they have lane narrowing and road diet for traffic calming characteristics and street parking and wide roadway crossings, lane narrowing, corridor access management, driveway realignment. So that was my only concern, is if we group this and then is this application, because it's calling out roadway diet, which technically it's not.
yeah, if it is not, then we just need to be sure that when we write the description in TxDOT Connect and in the AFA, that we are clear that what the actual work is, and not call it a road diet, because it's not. You know, if it is, then we would handle it, you know, as a road diet. But if it is not, then we just need to make sure our description is tight, you know?
Okay.
So be sure to send that to us, you know, what y'all how y'all plan to describe it, so we can work that through with you.
Okay. I mean, I have it set up in TxDOT Connect. I didn't use
Okay.
road diet
Was-
or anything in any of the description.
Okay.
I guess one other deal was Noah had mentioned, I guess if the population's over 50,000, they're not eligible for reimbursement of PS&E and environmental. Was that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the city of Amarillo, they're not eligible then. Okay. I just wanted to double check.
Correct. But just so you know, they still have the engineering phase checked in this TxDOT Connect STIP section because the project has direct state costs for TxDOT's review of PS&E and environmental and all that in there.
Okay. Okay, well, those are a couple questions I had because the MPO was working on the STIP pages to individually list this, but as a district, we were hoping to get it grouped. So,
Yeah, they'll need to adopt that new group chart.
okay, I
Mhm.
will get with them here shortly and discuss it with them.
Good, good.
All right, thank you for your help.
You're welcome.
Y'all have a good rest of the afternoon.
You too.
Thanks.